Hey friends, hey, welcome to this final On The Vise this morning. Glad everybody could be here. Hey, we're really thankful that we can provide this to you guys and to this community. The community is a huge thing to Montrose Anglers, and providing you with valuable educational resources. We just thank you for your support, and we're able to bring this stuff, and we're committed to that. Real briefly, I just want to speak real quick about some exciting news. We're planning on moving the shop around the 1st of May to Color Outdoors Development, which will be on Mayfly Drive. Our new shop will be on Mayfly Drive, right off of North Grand, and we'll have a lot more room to bring more of these kinds of events to you. So we're looking forward to that, and we just want to thank you out there on the web. Bring us your questions. We're monitoring the live stream on Facebook and YouTube, and with that, just wanted to talk about my friend Jordan. Jordan is he's just a really good friend, and I want to personally thank him for keeping our street safe, our community safe. He works tireless hours in our community, keeping us safe, and I really appreciate that. And every now and then, he works tirelessly floating us down the river, has these awesome lunches, and usually we catch fish. Sometimes people fall out of the boat, but not often, right? But anyway, Jordan's a great friend, and you guys are in for a treat. And so I got a couple questions I need to ask for you.
Yep.
So when did you start fishing?
Fly fishing?
Yes.
I actually started fly fishing a couple years after I started tying, so maybe when I was like 12.
Okay. And when did so you started fly fishing when you were 14?
Yeah, give or take.
Okay. Favorite place to go fish?
I don't know, either the channels at night for tarpon in Florida.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, good. And when you're not fishing, what do you like to do?
Tie?
No, and unrelated to fly fishing. Is there anything you like to do?
I'm normally planning the next trip or something, or work stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, be outside.
You kind of like you're kind of a foodie too, right?
A little bit.
Just a little bit. I think that's kind of
It
one
shows.
of our. Yeah, no, you're looking good, man. All right, well, what do you got for us today?
I'm going to start with little Mysis shrimp that's been really good to us on the Taylor. So.
Sweet. Let's see it.
Okay.
It's on you, buddy.
Okay. So this is my little Mysis shrimp. I tie it on the Firehole 718 and a 24. Like if you fish the frying pan, the shrimp up there are pretty big. You'll actually see them in the grass and stuff, but the Taylor, they're just super small. You never see them at all. So I just start with a white 10-aught Vevus thread. Get that started. And then I always tie in the eyes first, which normally I use a round rubber leg, but I couldn't find any of that because apparently I'm out. So this is
Thank you.
Yeah, a black sexy floss medium. So just kind of figure eight that a little bit. Tie that in. Come on. And then this will get cut down a lot too. And you can kind of manipulate that however you want. I always give it a little pull to cut it, and then we can always trim it later. So they're not very big at all. Spin that around. Come on. And I always like to get it somewhat straight, but we'll mess with that in a minute. There we go. And then the body of this that I use for the white is the crystal Simi seal. It's just a little bit different than what most people use, and I use it a lot on leeches. It just looks really, really good in the water. So I just pull a little clump off, kind of twist it a little bit to get it all together. We'll tie that in the front. And then I tie it back to the eyes, give one wrap on the other side of the eyes, and then just finish that off towards the front. Cut the stuff towards the eyelet. Yeah, and then just kind of build your body there. That's that for this little guy. And then just tie it off. Super simple, but last year I got a nice 30-inch bow on this, and I know Bill and I have had days up there where I think we got several fish over 25 on this. Yeah, and then so this rear side, you're just gonna go just behind it a little bit and just cut it. I go just beyond the bend of the hook there. And then we'll coat it. Make it a little durable. And then just cure it. So super simple, but I know different people have asked about that. That's the little Mysis. It's super simple. It's small. Like I said, I tie it as small as I can. If they made it in a 26 in the 718, I would tie that. But the 24 works really good. Super small. I always fish it in front of an egg or a bead. But that's that one.
You need to speak up.
I fish it in front of a bead. But yeah, that's that fly, and then we'll get into some bigger fun stuff that I know Nolan likes a little better. So.
Have you fished up at Frying Pan much?
I've been successful up there, but I haven't fished it a ton. Maybe like 3-4 times, but we've always done really well.
Yeah, you fish this up at Taylor.
Yeah, this is a Taylor bug. I think we're actually going up there Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, nice. Very nice.
But I don't know, do you guys want to see that? Or?
Yeah.
It's really big, so be careful.
What we need to do is grab those.
Oh, yeah. Here we are.
There, grab that.
I think we got a question for you, Jordan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jordan, what size Mysis did you catch that bow on?
This one.
On that one, really?
Yeah, a little 24, 718.
Anybody else got
It was
questions?
actually supposed to be someone else's fish, but it just was being finicky, and it ate for me.
If you tied those just for a solid hour, how many of those do you think you could pull out?
It depends what song is on and how much coffee I've had. If I can just concentrate, then I can do it a lot, but it's a pretty simple fly, and I lose concentration and get sidetracked a lot. But if I sat down for an hour, I mean, a couple dozen, it's a quick fly to tie. So, but it's very, very effective under the right circumstances. Thank you. It cuts better than the sexy floss, so.
All round eyes work pretty good too. Right?
Yeah. All right, so for this next one, I know Nolan likes this one. He fished it for about 5 casts before he had a big fish blow up on it. He did.
When we were fishing, I said, I think we need to tie this one.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
Saturday. So,
it's here.
did we decide on a name? I hope you did, because
So this one,
I got it listed on the internet as something. So
I think I'm just gonna go with Groucho because it's kind of funny to me, and the head is kind of messy, intentionally, but it's definitely effective. So this is going to be on the Firehole 811. I tie it at number 2, which is, and it's just a single hook, which is very odd for me in streamers. But so most of the time I tie double or articulated, but this one does really well. Gotta find my other thread. Oh, there it is. Okay, so on this, I just use a 3/0 or 200 Nano silk, just in white. And we'll just kind of start that thread, cut that off. So for the back of it, I use just a white bunny strip for the tail. I get that tied in. A lot of times I'd super glue this. I use a lot of super glue and UV resin on streamers just to make them tough, because I hate to spend time on something and have it not last. And it doesn't help when other people lose it on a log, Preston. So what I do to measure it is I always go about 1.5 times the length of the shank. So I just kind of fold it back and then, or fold it forward after I tie it in, look at it, and whatever. It's not anything specific, that's just what I do. So we'll cut that off. I'm not going to glue this one because this will be just fine. We'll just give it some extra wraps. All right. I like to, on this, because it's kind of a baby rainbow, I'll throw in a little bit of olive bucktail right here. So I just kind of cut a little clump of that. Some of those little tag-ins. And I don't want this to go all the way back with the tail, but maybe like 3/4, 2/3, somewhere in there. Nothing real specific. And we'll just get that tied in. Cinch it down good. And we will have quite a bit of flash in this as well, but we'll get there. So on this one, I like to use the UV polar chenille silver. I tie a lot with that. It gives it not a lot of weight. It doesn't retain the water too good, which is a good thing when you're casting big streamers, but then it gives it flash and action. So I do very much like that. I'll just tie that in. And I don't go all the way up the body on this because we got to leave room for the deer hair head. But every couple wraps, I like to just kind of tease it back. I tend to be maybe a little overly specific with when I'm tying, which annoys some. And we'll just take that, everything that tied forward, and pull it back. Oh, sorry. And then I'll throw in a little red or pink flash. This is just a Flashabou in pink. And you want kind of a big clump, not crazy huge or anything, because we're going to add more of this into the head as well. And you want that to go really kind of wherever, but I always line it up with about the end of the bucktail, or the main clump of the bucktail. So I'll give that a couple loose wraps, and then I like to, from here, twist it around a little bit so it's not all in the same spot. And then bring it back, tighten that up. All right. So from there, I use this really specific fancy tool. It's just a bread tie to wrap everything back, because it'll get caught in all the other flash when you're making the dubbing loop. And I always wrap around it a few times just to kind of set that up. And I use the rotary function a lot, probably more than I need to, but paid for it, so why not use it? And this is where it gets a little tricky to lay your, because I'll do a deer hair and flash dubbing loop, and to try to get everything lined up, it can kind of get messy and a pain, but you don't want to go, you want a big clump of hair, but not too awful much, because then when you're trying to spin your loop, it will clump up and a lot will fall out. So I go about maybe, I guess it'd be about a pencil and a half, give or take, thickness there. We'll cut that off. And then I do like to get all of the little underfur out, so we'll just comb it real quick, because that does make a difference. The underfur is super slidey, so it doesn't tighten down much and everything will move on you. Plus it's just unneeded bulk. And I do stack it. You don't really need to, but it just makes it, it lines it up a little better. Even though this one, like I say, is messier, so it's not the true deer hair style, but it comes out that way a little bit. So we'll throw that there. And then I do wax the thread also. So I guess I should have done that before, because that will help hold your deer hair in place for this loop. And then on this clump of flash, we're going to want a bigger clump, because we're going to put it on top, try to mix it up, and then we'll spin it in. All right. So I just kind of put it in my hand, kind of like that, and then just work the flash through, kind of flatten everything a little bit so we don't have big clumps. So it winds up something kind of like that. And then we take it, throw it in our loop. And then I like to, when I get it in there, kind of spread it out a little bit, because we don't want clumps that are too big. It gets uneven and then stuff falls out. And it gets pretty messy, but that's all right. And we'll just spin that really good. All right, so once you have it spun good, I like to just kind of tease it out and see if there's anything that's going to come out now and fall. And then I always try to fold it back a little bit, so you get the bulk of it on the one side. It makes it a little fuller, but opposed to the normal deer hair, I like to have that flash in there, because when we come back and trim it, it gives it a pretty cool look. We'll just wrap that. And again, this head is going to be way messier than like a normal deer hair head, but it is by design. So I think sometimes we can get too fancy where we're trying to catch fishermen and not the fish. All right, once we have that to the front and pushed back, we'll just tie off this loop. Once you get that cut off, you just kind of pull stuff back, give it a couple wraps in front so your eyelet's good and visible. Okay. Tie it off real well, we'll cut that thread. And then we will trim this down with a razor. Let's see. I do like to brush it out just a little bit. Any of those flash fibers that are trapped, it helps get some of them going back the same way. And then anything that's loose, it just brings it out. It's just less to cut. Fresh pack of razors. Okay, so I don't get too carried away with trimming this one, because again, part of it is of this fly is that the head is a little messier, but it has that flash in it, and it's just very effective. But I always take the bottom and kind of flatten that, and then I like to just give a little bend to the razor and give it a little head so it'll dive just a wee bit. And I do always fish these on a sink tip or full sink line. Also, by not having like the deer hair packed so tight, it helps it to not float as much, so it will get down a little better. It rides in the water column differently. So that's about that on this one. And again, the head by design is a little messier. But then when we take our fancy bread tie off, we get the rest of the flash there. Pretty good bulk, but not crazy. It's a much smaller streamer for me, but it is very effective. Nolan can speak of that. So yeah, that's that one, and then we'll just UV the front. I pretty much UV everything for durability. And as far as streamers go, this one it's different. It's cool. It has great action, and it's a fairly quick tie.
And effective.
And very effective. I like this color. This has been probably the best. I also tie it in yellow and then black as well. So that's that one.
Groucho.
Yeah, and it just looks, it gives you, I mean, you can add more flash. I don't know if you guys can see that. but you can add more flash into it if you want, so you get more flash throughout the head. But it's just different. It breaks up that solid olive or whatever, and a little more flash. So, yeah, that's that one, the Groucho.
Stasik, what's your question?
Thank you. Do you tie them in any other colors?
Yeah, yellow and then black.
Okay.
I like this color the best, but on the gunny, yellow and brown is really, really good. But I do like this one as well. This has probably been the most productive. So, then black's always good for off color.
Other questions?
Clips right there.
All right, good on that one. Throw some stuff out.
Anybody else got any more questions?
How big was that log you hooked, Nolan?
Hey, I've got a witness, right?
Yeah, no, it
Tell him. Tell.
was a great fish. It blew up on it, but we didn't get it to the boat. But
you don't have to say that.
it was a good fish.
Yeah, just an LDR, just long
It was
distance
it was
release.
kind of one of those because it had been a tough day that day, and it was kind of like, you know, and I'm not really a golfer. And people ask me, "Are you a golfer?" And I say, "Yeah, I've got golf clubs," but it's kind of like when you've had a rough round of golf, and then you're about the 17th hole and you hit a really nice shot. That fish got the adrenaline pumping for sure. It was fun.
Oh yeah, he was excited.
Yeah, I was excited.
Yeah. Streamer takes are the best. I think the only thing better than that's the mouse, but I'm not getting into that. So the next one is going to be a feather game changer. And then I always throw a deer hair head on it because I like it. So give me just a moment to get things around.
Now, is this a new one in your repertoire? Have you been?
Nah, yes and no.
Yeah.
I've played around with these for quite a while. I think most of them end up getting lost to logs, but yeah, no, they do really well. Okay, so I do start with quite a small hook on the rear. I went through a phase where everything was huge, and to see how big of a streamer the Gunnison trout would actually eat, and now I'm kind of downsizing stuff a little bit for no reason other than it's just different. So for the rear hook on this, it's actually a Mustad 2X heavy egg hook. So that's what I use on the rear. Get that adjusted. All right. And then this one has just a boatload of feathers in it, since it's a feather game changer, but they're fun. So you kind of go through, on the tail on this I use quite a small feather. This is a whiting wet fly cape, and just kind of pick through and find your feathers. And this is just for the tail on this one. All right, once you find your couple feathers, I always put them so the underside is facing each other, and I guess we should start our thread first. All right. And then I always just take it, try to line them up as best you can. The tips, it's never going to be absolutely perfect, but try to line them up pretty good. And then I'll just rip some of these fibers off to give me a tie-in point. And then I always trim that so it's just less to work with. Alright, so we get that tied in, and with these, if they don't go in perfectly straight up and down, or so they're sandwiched together, you can either leave it like that, because when you're stripping it through the water, it's going to go all crazy anyhow, but I like them to get lined up, so if it's like too far down or they're not lined up, you can always pick it up and wrap underneath and manipulate it how you want, make the material do what you want it to do. Get that there. So once we get that tied down, I'm going to switch to a different feather, and this is it's a whiting 4B bugger cape, I believe. On these, since we want to get the taper so it's smaller in the back, and then each time we move up, and then with the different joints, you want it to be a bigger feather. You just kind of start at the bottom and then work your way up when you're picking your feathers, because most of your smaller stuff's down low. I always tie these in 2 at a time because it's a lot of wrapping and a lot of feathers, but if you do, I've done up to 4 at a time, and that gets a little tricky just because I was being lazy and trying to do it quick. But if you do 2 at a time, it just way better wraps, and it just end product is better. So get that tied in. Then I like to just pinch them, kind of wet my fingers, and try to bend these fibers back a little bit. So you just have them bent a little bit so they're going to kind of go in the same direction and give you a little more bulk. And as you're tying that, as you're wrapping that around, you can manipulate it as well, kind of how you want. And then of course we'll go through once we tie it in with the thread and make it look a little prettier. And I always throw a little bit of the white in there just for extra contrast. And I kind of pull all of them, wrap it back just a wee bit. Everything just shifted on me. All right. So these we just keep picking feathers and keep wrapping forward. Grab a couple more here. I always leave the tips kind of long just to give me a good tie-in point, and it makes it a little stronger. Don't want to crowd the eye of the hook too awfully much on this. It'll kind of take away some of the action from having the different articulation joints if you tie too far to the front, likewise too far to the rear of the next joint as well. you want a little teeny gap there. Just give that a couple lip finishes. And you can trim this up. I always hit it with UV again too. Make sure your eyelet's clear so you can put it on the joint, the articulation joint. Little UV, cure that, and then we're on to the next one. I always start out, you want to start out with your smaller joint first, and then you know, get bigger as you go. So this is just the 10 mil fish spine. These are a little bit of a pain to put on if you use your dubbing or your bodkin or a needle, whatever, and you slide it on there. It can help you a little bit while leaving this hook in the vise.
What size is that?
That is the 10 mil. Yeah. So, and we'll take that one out. Then we'll just put our fish spine in the vise itself. This first one, because it is so small, gets a little frustrating, and it can be kind of difficult. When you get to the bigger spines, it's a little easier. I always take my thread and start it right on that crimp point, and then make really good, tight, firm wraps. I do throw a little bit of super glue on the thread and then up the spine. It just helps that gel spun thread that's super slidey to stay in place a little bit better. And this is just a Gorilla Glue, super glue. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of it over any of the other stuff, but it was just the one that I could find that had the brush. I like the brush is the main thing, opposed to like a pen tip nozzle or gel. So once we get that on there, we're gonna wrap back a little further up that spine and tighten everything down. It just holds it in place way better, opposed to letting that thread slide up or down the spine itself. And then we're just going to pick out some feathers and start wrapping that forward again. And again, you want to go a little bit bigger. Each time you go forward or tie in new feathers, you're going to try to find just a little bit bigger to get a nice taper. It's definitely one of those things that looks super messy till you come back around and get everything taken care of. Clean it up a little bit. So those ones actually covered good, so I'm only going to do the 2 on that little tiny spine, and then we'll whip finish that. I'm not a huge fan of the solid white thread. I don't like the white points, so I'm just going to take a Sharpie. This is like a copper Sharpie, and just kind of color that a little bit. Just to dull down that white thread. Like I said, I don't like the big thick white points that are super bright, and then we'll finish that. She needs to press 2. So we will move forward to the next spine. So then we're just going to go with the same spine, but it's 15 millimeter instead of a 10 millimeter. This is the Renzetti Master. Yeah. It's subdued. It's as functional as it is awesome looking. Yeah, it's as functional as it is awesome looking. So I tied on a Dynaking for 20 years or so, and that was a great vise. But this one's sweet. So again, we'll start that thread back on where they come together. And then I like to wrap it forward to get over that hump so we don't have anytime you have ends of the wire or anything, it's going to be just a little sharpened, I guess, if you will. And it just helps to prevent any thread from getting cut. Even though this stuff's pretty thick, we'll be fine. And then it gives it a little tiny bit of a taper, so stuff will wrap on it better instead of sliding. Get some more glue. I like to wrap over that glue. And then you work it up again on your spine. And grab some feathers. And one thing too about these, this feather is it has a little white tip, so it gives it just a little more color variation. Anything grizzlied or speckled or whatever, it's just when you wrap it, it's just going to give it different looks opposed to a solid. And I think anytime you have something kind of mixing it up, it helps a little bit, make it look a little fishier. It may just be a preference of mine, but the fish seem to cooperate, so.
Jordan, who's Drake?
Drake?
Yeah.
He is my little nephew. He is like a live cartoon. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's saying, hi, beans, whatever beans it.
I'm not sure. He probably wants to play Fortnite or something. I don't know. They're all in Michigan, so that's a way I can hang out with them. So this gets a little, it's just kind of same, since we're at same steps over and over, but we'll get there. The payoff is totally worth it. So you just get such good action. Go through a ton of feathers, but the action you get out of it is really, really worth it. And again, I don't like that bright white, so I just color a little bit. Maybe. And then in changing up colors and whatnot, markers can be your friend. It's whether it be coloring the feather itself or like a bunny strip or thread or whatever, it definitely helps to change it a little bit, as I'm not one that's going to do what everyone else does. Slightly, I guess. So I have to be different a little bit. All right. So now we'll go to the 20 millimeter spine. That'll be our last spine. And then this one we will throw a little tiny bit of flash at the front of it, but the rest of it is going to be the same process as this, to this point.
Is that the 15 millimeter? Did you say that?
This is the 20 millimeter, so we go short hook, 10, 15, 20, and this is the 20. Try to breeze through this one a little bit. Sometimes too, in these fibers, when you're trying to bend them back, if you kind of twist your finger, or rub your fingers up and down, it gives it a little better crimp. It's really not that big of a deal, but that comes down to me being a little picky. We're almost there on this, where we'll start changing it up a little bit. I know there's a ton of different ways to do these too. Like a lot of people put polar chenille or body wrap or something in between the feather wraps. I like it just to have all the natural feather fibers, at least for this part of it. It's just a preference thing, no specific reason. throw one more clump of feathers in here, and we'll add a little bit of flash, and we'll be onto the front hook, or head fly, I guess. Alright, throw a little copper flash in here. And I kind of measure it back to kind of the start of the tail, give or take. That's just for me, it doesn't really matter. We'll get it initially tied in kind of loose and then work it around and then tighten it up. You always lose a few fibers, not a big deal. So that completes, once we color it and UV it, that completes the rear section of this fly. All of the sections, and then we'll from here this will get a couple beads and get tied on in the front, and we'll get to that next. As far as the head, there's a lot of different things you can do with it, whether it be wool, deer hair, foam. I've been enjoying deer hair heads. It gives it a little bit of float, so on that sink tip or sinking line, I like the action it gives it.
Have you had good success with that loon light? You like that light?
Yeah, I've used it for probably 2.5 years now or so, and I've really enjoyed it.
Is that the one with the USB charge? on
Yeah,
it? Yep.
yeah, it's the infinity light, but it's done what I need it to. So for the front hook, I just used the Gamakatsu B10S. This is going to be a number 2. I guess you can't see it. I had to write on there. I buy them in bulk because I go through a few. Did you want to take a break or?
Yeah, we can take a break after.
Okay.
You want to take one right now?
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get started on this after a quick break.
Yeah. Can we take a few minute break and finish this up? We've still got some donuts over there. I do not want any donuts left, please. So help yourself. There's coffee over there that will.
You know I can't have donuts.
You need water.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'll grab one. But.
Well, as long as I don't lean back. The sun's shining on that chair in the back. As long as I don't lean back, I'm okay. Yeah.
It's warm right here. All right, so that's actually what we're going for.
Yeah, that was Bobcat Trail.
All right. I think this is the cleanest tying area I've had in years. The guys get there yesterday, they're like, you need to clean up in here. I'm like, I did. My tying desk is an absolute mess.
You can see the table. Leave me alone.
All right, we're ready.
All right.
Back on, man.
Okay, so for the front hook, we're going with the Gamakatsu B10S. This is size 2. We'll get our thread started there. And then I don't like wire for attaching the rear part of the fly to the front hook. I use, this is 50 pound leader material. I think it's Stren or something, I don't know. But I've had good success with that. And I always tie it with how it keeps its curve like that. If you tie it in up, it will leave a better, when you put the rear hook or the rear part of the fly on, if you tie it straight up like that, when you actually wrap it down in, it's straighter, and I like that. So get that tied in real tight. And then most of the time I use 2 beads on my flies. If it's real bigger, I'll throw 3. So this bead is in true fashion, being like everyone else, just a little black skull bead, because I think it's funny. Oops, did you get that? Okay. So I'll go that, and then I like to throw just an orange. These are the 3D beads. I use those a lot on streamers. Just take the rear part of our fly, throw it on here, feed that through. I don't like to pull this down too crazy tight. What happened there? If you tighten it too much, it kinks it, and then it doesn't let you get as much action on the back. So there we go. So I always pull it to about there. So you kind of have a big loop here, let the beads do their job, and then you get nice action from it. And then when you tighten it up, you can adjust that a little bit. So if you take a few wraps down from where you were, it tightens that just a wee bit, but that right there is what we're shooting for.
If you can get those skulls made in power bait, I know Jeff would tie some flies with them.
Yeah. They're completely unscented. They are tested on animals. But then we'll give some really tight wraps over that. And I don't like the wire for this part because one, I think it'll rust out and break. And up here when we're tying in that mono, with this heavy thread, we can actually kind of cut down into it so it holds it a little better.
Jeff, I bet you could slather some on it though.
I'm seeing a lot of potential.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I use the feather too. Those fibers, they hold that really well. The synthetic material, it just doesn't hold the same. So I just throw some glue over that. Again, for me, it's all about reinforcing it, making it durable. Because these take quite a bit of time. You want it to last. It's not a one and done type thing. And then I like to put a good base of thread over all of that, over the glue. And I kind of have to hold the vise because even with this big streamer base, I put a lot of pressure on it. All right. So for the back part of the front hook, I like to wrap some Marabou in there. I just like the action it gives. Marabou's a love-hate because it gets everywhere, but it gives such good action. But you wind up with fibers everywhere. So I'll just tie that in tip first, just like we did all of our other feathers. And then this won't fold like the other stuff, so I just kind of manually hold it back as I'm wrapping it, and it turns out to be a gigantic mess. But again, when you tie it off and finish it, just make the material do what you want it to do. Trap some of this. When you're tying this into, you can trap some of the extra fibers because that quill of that feather gets kind of thick, but the fibers are long, so you can trap some extra fibers. So when you cut it, you get the bulk of that quill off, but then you still get extra fibers. And if you needed to, you just add in another, hooks are sharp, add in another feather if you'd like. With this, once I get it tied in, I do kind of brush it a wee bit, or comb it out rather. Got to keep it somewhat neat. All right. Tighten some wraps over that to really secure it well. We also have the glue underneath, so that'll help. And then in front of the Marabou, I'll throw another clump of flash, some longer strands, and a little less this time. But I want it to go just beyond the that front segment of the hook. And what we're going for there is once this Marabou comes back and then the flash, kind of cover up some of this joint and articulation points when it's in the water. Just so we don't have a big gap, it makes it more streamlined and look as one opposed to two separate flies while it's in the water. Couple loose wraps, and we just work that around how we want, so it's not all one big clump on top. I don't like that. Maybe you do, and you can do it that way. It doesn't really matter. Secure that in real good. So that's what we're left with there. I'm going to take a couple of the biggest feathers on the cape from, it's going to be the same feather that we used on all the rest of the joints, just to kind of get that color to mix. All right, and then if you crowd too far forward to where you don't think your head's gonna fit on there, or your deer hair, you can just kind of wrap back a little bit. I have plenty of room there because it's not gonna be a giant deer hair head, but we'll still have a pretty decent one there. So that's what we're left with to this point, and then we'll start getting the deer hair in. For this, I'm gonna use the brown rust. This is a belly patch, and then yellow also. Especially on this rear clump, you want to make sure to prep your deer hair good, so you can leave some of the fibers up so that it's all somewhat even. You get those little underfurs out. And we'll stack it. Good enough. And we'll kind of figure out your length there that you wanted. I'm good with that. You'll hold your clump there. I always do 2 or 3 pretty loose wraps so it stays in place how it is there. And then I work it around just a little bit, so I'm not really spinning it. Let's see, so you work it around like that, and then I come back, hold it where I want it, and then tighten it down, and it just flares up pretty nice for you like that, while still staying in place. Give yourself a couple wraps forward through it to hold it all in place. All right, and just push everything back, pack it a little bit, And then I like to do 2 colors just to mix it up. So then we'll go yellow, because brown and yellow are really good to me. And I always do a fairly good sized clump here, and we'll get all the shorter fibers out. We'll brush it for any fur. There's a lot less under fur on this, on the belly patches, and it's a little thicker fiber itself. I'm not going to stack this one just because it doesn't really matter, but we'll tie that in here and do the same thing. Few looser wraps to hold it in place. Work it around slightly, hold it, pull it really tight to try not to cut through it, like I think I did some.
What weight GSP you working with? 200?
200, yeah. It's a little bulky sometimes, but it's super strong, so you can really put a lot of pressure in.
Really puts pressure
And then it's also thicker, so it kind of helps to prevent cutting through some of the stuff where your thinner thread will, if it's even strong enough to hold it. So we're going to push that back so we have room for one more clump here. Just cut that through. Give it some wraps there. All right, give ourselves a little bit of room for one more big clump of brown.
Jordan, while you're in the interlude there, how long would it take an average tire to, just as a point of curiosity, I'm sorry, how long would it take to tie a pattern like this, for your opinion?
If you have everything laid out and
everything ready to
prepped,
go.
and you don't have to search for it like I do at home on my desk, I don't know, you're probably in at a 45 minutes or so on the very short end, maybe.
It's worth it. Streamer, people who tie streamers, it's not an issue for them anyway.
Yeah, there's definitely, it takes quite a bit of time and a lot of materials, but.
And if you were going to tie half a dozen of these, you'd do it in stages, right? The bottom, the top, the middle.
I don't like to tie that way myself.
Really?
I like.
Okay.
Once I start something, I'm very impatient to get it finished. So I always tie the whole thing. I have tried to like do rear sections, like if it's just a double deceiver, like try to do like 6 rear hooks, and then my brain and I just don't function that way. I like to do the whole thing. So that's just me. I don't know that it's the most efficient, but that's how I do it. So I did, while we were talking there, I tied in this front clump, and it's the same thing. I guess I should have waited there, but your loose few wraps, work it around, and then tighten it down, and we'll work our thread through to the front, push everything back so we have that eyelet good and visible. And then we can use our half hitch packer tool to push everything back while we tie it off, which also when we cut it down is going to make that eyelet visible so you can actually tie onto it. We'll cut our thread off, maybe. I always try to not cut too much of the hair when I cut the thread. And with that thicker GSP, if you just give it good tension, it cuts really easy. Let's see, I'm going to slide this back. So when you go to trim the head, there's so much you can do with it. It's also where it gets super messy. I tend to like to go a little boxier. I don't really know why. It's just how I tie it, and it's effective. It works. It's a little quicker than trying to get wonderfully round, even head, because that can be a pain, and it's something you can sit and fiddle with for forever, and then you find one strand and that's not even, and you can just keep cutting and get to the point where you've cut too much, and then you've kind of screwed the whole thing up. So I always start kind of longer and then tighten it up. But I go flat on the bottom. On the front, I kind of come up at an angle, and then we'll just start flattening it out on top. Then I'll work on the sides, give it a little tiny bit of a taper. So once we've got kind of our initial shape, then I'll come back and tighten it up a little more. And again, I like it to be more boxy, and that's just a personal preference. It's been effective, it works, and quite frankly, it's a little less time consuming than getting the nice rounded heads. You always find that one pesky fiber that you just want gone, but you can't get to without screwing everything else up. There we go. And really, as far as how you shape your deer hair, you can do it kind of however you want. And not kind of, you absolutely do it however you want. Which is the joy of making your own flies. And this is where you start over trimming, because you find one side you want to make it more even, and then you cut too much, so you go back to the other one, and then you wind up with the very small head. So sometimes less is more. The fish don't care, it's not going to be perfect. And actually, if you have a little unevenness, then it gives it better action in the water. Sometimes I'll intentionally cut like a slant in them sideways so it wobbles. If you almost think like Rapala and how they get weird actions. You can do that with any deer hair head as well. All right, we're gonna be done with that. Otherwise, we just sit here and trim all day. And then I always flip it over and throw my UV on the bottom, and I'm pretty generous with it because, again, it's a fly that takes quite a bit of time, has a bunch of materials, and we want it to last. All right, so that's my version of a feather game changer. It's been very effective. Here on the Gunnison, we've caught fish on it on the white in Arkansas. But yeah, so that's that. Let's see if I can get the nice little taper in it, some flash, and just a lot of good action.
You guys got any questions about that? I know you do, Stassi.
I might, actually. Actually, I don't know.
I think Doc took your question because I know you're the one that asked the same. How long would it take to tie that?
No, this is a different one. Close, though.
Well, with a little break, about an hour.
Yeah, about an hour.
Would different shapes of the head affect the way it swims?
Yeah, absolutely. I like I said, I like the boxiness, the kind of box style head. It's just easier to trim. I am no deer hair expert at all. I am very novice that way, but it works. So I like to just have more angles. Maybe it's because I'm a math guy and the angles work for me. But the rounded stuff is cool, and like you can always flex your razor, and I know they make different tools for that too. But it's really kind of a pain. And I like it to be more symmetrical, so if I just do the angles, it works. But that's just, it works for me, and I like the way it looks, so I do it. But yeah, I mean, like if you put a slant on it, like to the side, it'll kind of, every time you strip it, dive that way or whatever. So you can control a lot of the action with the head.
Are you finding you're hooking more of them with the back hook or the front?
It's almost 50-50, it depends. It just kind of depends where they hit it, but I mean, I would say 50-50. Maybe the back hook actually. Yeah. So.
What do you think, Bill? Fence maker, you got anything over there for us?
No,
Not today.
He's the man. I'm letting him write it. So it's like, no, that'll work.
I don't know about that.
Jeff's got a question.
Uh-oh.
No.
When you're not really spinning, when you're putting on your deer hair, the loose wraps, and then tightening it rather than spinning it, do you just do that because you feel like you get a better distribution?
I
Have
think-
more control of the distribution?
Yes and yes. You can tie in a bigger clump so you're not trying to spin as much and you don't have to pack it as much. So you can tie in a much bigger clump, because I found that a lot of times it just wasn't getting the correct distribution. So you can tie in a bigger clump, you do that, and then when you kind of work it around and then hold it and tighten it, it then traps it into place when you're holding it. So you can kind of look to see how your distribution is before you even tighten it up, and then when you pinch it down and then tighten it, it's going to be essentially right where it was. So I have better control that way. So.
Anybody else?
Good.
You got a question, Tyler?
Do you ever use synthetic brushes, like pre-made brushes? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't. I have some, but I've never used them. So I just like if I'm going to do the game changer, I like the feather. I don't know why. It's just a preference.
Trim it afterwards.
Right. Yeah. No, I just like it the way it fishes.
Yeah.
It's been very effective. So.
I got a couple comments here online. One from Tristan, you remember our friend Tristan, who's out in North Carolina now. Awesome stuff, Jordan. You're really thoughtful with your streamers, and they turn out incredible. And then this other guy, Caleb, you may know him too. Looking good, Jordan.
He's a little shady.
Yeah, he is a little shady. Looking good, Jordan. He asked the same question that was earlier asked, was trailer hook or front hook.
Yeah, and that really depends. But
Yeah.
So I think I can bust out this last one real quick.
Can you?
I think so.
Okay.
We might rush a little.
We got a special fly that Jordan is going to bust out for us.
So it's not the Uncle Padre. We're not going to speak of that. All right.
Uncle Dad.
Yeah, there's a story behind that.
I'll have to get that one from you later.
Yeah.
That picture was pretty good.
Yeah. All right. So this one is going to be articulated, but with a single hook. For the rear, I use the Firehole intruder hook. This is a number 4. And then for the articulation wire or strand, if you will, I'm using 65-pound Power Pro. It's super flexible, and it's just, I like it for some stuff. So I double that up, run it through the eye, and then just split the hook real quick, pull it tight. I'm going to leave that as is with just this guy. So we'll get that in. So I'm just going to leave that like that. That will be how we connect it. And I'm going to tie in my thread. And we're going to try to get this done quick, so taking shortcuts may make it way longer. All right, just get our thread started kind of like that, nothing special. For this one, this is a just orange and black bunny strip. We're only going to tie in just a little bit here, but then we'll leave it long and trim it later. So we want just a teeny bit here for the tail. And so the way this fly actually came about is we went to fish Fall Creek, and they were doing construction on the road, so we couldn't get in because they had it closed, and we ended up fishing the Cimarron instead. But we had only taken light rods to fish dries on Fall Creek, and on the Cimarron they just weren't hitting very well on dries. And I had a 6 foot 2 weight, or 6 foot 2 inch 2-weight fiberglass rod, and so I switched over to a streamer similar-ish to this, but then I made it better. And we absolutely slayed it on the little tiny fiberglass rod with the streamer. So it's kind of funny. But, so. We'll just tie that off.
Okay, I got to ask, that monofilament you put there seems to be getting in the way a lot. So why do you put that on first rather than tying in the stuff and then?
Just the way I do it, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Stop asking questions.
There is literally no rhyme or reason. Then it works with my brain and my head. I don't know. So I just threw some UV on that to cure that. We're going to leave that as is for now. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to do stuff. My way may or may not be the right way, but it's my order of operation. I don't know. So yeah. So this is just the Firehole straight shank, and it's that one. It's, what is it? The 3/4 of an inch, and that's what I use for the front. We are going to throw a little cone head on it. Just a little gold cone head, tungsten. Yes, you do. Yeah, you know this one. All right, so when we get that on, we're gonna clip or get this. And I do think the way to fish this this fly is on the 6'2" 8" fiberglass. It's just a riot. Not really, but that's what we had. And when I say slayed it, like 5-7 fish out of one hole, it was sick. All right, so we get that tied in. We're gonna come up with our thread here. And this also has done really well on the Gunnison too. I don't want to get that thread back too far because I'm going to throw some glue on it, and I don't want it on my jaws. But we'll hold off on the glue for just a moment. So we're going to bring, and just kind of as far, basically however long you want that is where you're going to set it. I have it about 1.5 times the shank back. That's about where I tend to like it. We're going to tie our braid in first, and then I like to tie it forward and then double back on it as well.
It's that braid.
Yeah.
It fights with you like that.
And you can pull it out. It's like I said, it's a pain. That's just how I do it. But then we'll cut that off.
The beauty of the braid, though, is that the Power Pro is the fact that it's hard to break even when it's wet.
Yeah.
Some guys use backing, 20, 30 pound backing, and that'll wear on the eye, whereas this braid doesn't do that. GSP doesn't do that.
Yeah. And say it's a little bit of a pain to work with, but it's super strong and it's flexible too. Cause,
Worth the effort.
then we'll throw some glue on that. Just help secure everything.
And the beauty of that wire is the fact that the wire is stiff on the back and that back hook is here. And the whole thing can move in the back.
All right. So what we're going to do here is pull our braid straight and then try to line our bunny strip up to about where we want it. So if we line our bunny strip up with the braid pulled straight, it'll get us about where we want it, and then just it gets us the good measurement so everything's straight there. And you might have to trim a little bit anyhow, but it gives us an idea. I might have cut it too short. Little short, doesn't matter. It'll stretch, big deal. So don't do it like that. Limited time on this. This is just bonus. So we'll get that tied in well, and that's going to stretch too. So when you actually pull it straight, it's no big deal. Are we good? For the body, really quick, we're going to use just an olive UV puller chenille. Tie that in, throw a few wraps of that. Get that tied in, tightened down real good. And then for the collar here, I'm going to use a chartreuse guinea because I don't like color very much. And then same thing with the other feathers. We're going to kind of try to bend it back a little bit just to get everything going to the rear. It doesn't have to be super thick. Or you don't have to put a ton on. It's just giving it some extra color and fishiness, if you will. Tie that off. I'm going to pull everything back. And then just a little olive. This is actually a sow scud dubbing, but we're just going to throw a little olive right in front of that to hide some of the thread wraps. And we're not at all going for perfection on this. This will kind of tease itself out as you fish it and give it little extra strands, but we're mainly looking for that to help push these fibers back and then hide some of our thread. And then we will whip finish it. Tighten that down in so that dubbing covers it. And that's that. I don't have a name for this one, but on a 2-way fiberglass, it works really, really well.
2-way fiberglass.
And then also black and purple work quite well as well on this fly. So just the black guinea and then black bunny strip with the purple purple polar chenille. That's quite good too. But then you can see there how that UV light catches that. It just, I don't know, it's a quick, easy, good little fly.
Wow, you did it. I know. Good job.
Oh yeah.
Any questions, guys? No? Anything? No? Tim, you don't have any comments about this guy?
None that I can say here.
Okay. Later. Yeah.
You fish out on a sinking line?
I do, yeah. Like if I'm fishing the gunny, I would fish that on a sinking line. Obviously, I fished it on a floating line, but I think that was kind of why I started going smaller with some of my streamers, because like I say, last fall we totally had to change plans and mix it up, and was not prepared, but we did really, really, really well on that. So.
All right, Ed, Doc, you're going to have to tell us if any of these fish, any of these flies catch anything in the next few days. That's right.
If they don't,
Barbless.
That's right.
Barbless.
Absolutely.
I don't warn many people about that, but I've had guys that have run into it.
I just gotta talk him out of
Yeah.
all the stuff he tied today.
I know. He'll give them to you.
No, he won't.
No.
I might owe him a little bit.
All right, guys. Hey, we really appreciate everybody coming out this year, today, and this year. And I just want to give a special thanks to Jordan and and all the tires that we've had this year. Preston and Tyler and Dwayne Redford, Jeff Dean, Tim Jacobs. It was a fun season, and We may not be done completely this year. We may slide somebody in sometime, when they can tie flies. But keep your eyes peeled, and we'll be having events all through the summer. And just thank you. And we want to thank Drew Lowen and his team, really the one behind all the scenes, Gina. I want to thank her specifically. And thank you all, everybody. So we appreciate you. And with that, go out and go fish. Tight lines, guys. Take care.